True victory over a narcissist is internal, not visible or dramatic, because narcissistic dynamics are built on attention, reaction, and emotional supply, not on logic or fairness. When you are trapped in that dynamic, you are conditioned to believe that winning means proving your truth, exposing their lies, or watching them finally admit fault. But the narcissist does not operate in the realm of mutual understanding. They operate in control. Any visible battle, any emotional display, any attempt to be seen or validated keeps you tied to their gravity. Internal victory begins the moment your nervous system stops bracing for them, when your body no longer reacts before your mind even catches up. It shows up as calm where there used to be hypervigilance, silence where there used to be over-explaining, and self-trust where there used to be doubt planted by manipulation. This kind of victory feels almost anticlimactic because there is no audience and no applause, yet it is the most permanent form of freedom. You stop measuring your worth through their approval or rejection. You stop editing your behavior to avoid their anger. You stop anticipating their moods as if they were weather you had to survive. Internally defeating a narcissist means reclaiming authorship over your own reality after someone tried to rewrite it. It means you no longer need them to change for you to heal. The absence of drama is not weakness. It is evidence that the emotional hooks have dissolved. You no longer feel the urge to confront, correct, or defend yourself because your sense of self is no longer under threat. The narcissist may still speak, accuse, or provoke, but their words land on a self that is no longer porous. This internal shift is why true victory often goes unnoticed by others and even by the survivor at first. There is no explosion, only a quiet withdrawal of energy. Your life begins to expand in small, ordinary ways that feel surprisingly safe. Decisions feel clearer. Boundaries feel natural rather than forced. The need to be understood fades because understanding yourself becomes enough. What once felt like strength in confrontation is revealed as survival, and what now feels like softness is revealed as power reclaimed from within. Emotional detachment is a stronger weapon than confrontation, because confrontation feeds the very system a narcissist relies on to maintain power. When you confront a narcissist, even with truth, evidence, or calm logic, you are still offering emotional energy, attention, and engagement. To them, intensity matters more than accuracy. Anger, tears, passion, and defense all confirm that they still occupy space inside you. Detachment removes the fuel entirely. It is not coldness or cruelty. It is the conscious decision to stop letting another person's behavior dictate your inner state. This shift happens gradually. At first, you may still feel triggered, but you choose not to act on it. Then one day, you notice the trigger itself has weakened. Their words no longer penetrate the way they once did. Detachment restores your autonomy because it redirects your focus from controlling the narcissist's perception of you to regulating your own emotions. It teaches your nervous system that you are no longer in danger, no longer required to perform, prove, or protect yourself from constant invalidation. Confrontation seeks acknowledgement, but detachment assumes self-validation. When you detach, you stop arguing with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to be seen by someone who benefits from keeping you unseen. This is why detachment feels threatening to a narcissist. They can twist confrontation into drama, denial, or victimhood, but detachment gives them nothing to reshape. It creates an emotional vacuum where manipulation once thrived. You are no longer available for guilt, fear, or obligation to be used against you. Detachment reshapes your identity. The power lies in refusing to fight a battle that was designed to drain you. By stepping out of the emotional arena, you deprive the narcissist of the control they once wielded, while simultaneously reclaiming your peace and agency in ways confrontation never could. Silence and peace signal power reclaimed because narcissistic control depends on noise, confusion, and constant emotional turbulence. In the presence of a narcissist, life often feels loud inside your head, filled with second guessing, rehearsed conversations, and the pressure to respond correctly to avoid punishment or withdrawal. When that noise fades, it is not emptiness. It is authority returning to its rightful place. Silence is not the absence of strength, but the presence of self containment. It means you no longer feel compelled to explain, defend, or justify your choices to someone who consistently weaponized your words against you. Peace emerges when your inner world is no longer organized around managing another person's reactions. This shift is profound because it rewires your nervous system. Your body learns that it no longer has to stay on alert, no longer has to scan for danger in tone, text messages, or facial expressions. As peace settles in, you may notice a strange discomfort at first because chaos once felt familiar. But familiarity is not the same as safety. Choosing silence over engagement is a declaration that your energy is no longer available for manipulation. Narcissists interpret silence as loss of control because it removes their ability to provoke, confuse, or dominate the narrative. When you stop reacting, they lose access to your emotional landscape. Peace also reflects discernment. You begin to understand that not every truth needs to be spoken aloud, and not every accusation deserves a response. Your sense of self no longer rises and falls with their approval or disapproval. Silence becomes a boundary that does not need explanation. It communicates that you trust yourself enough to let your life speak on your behalf. In this space of quiet, clarity returns. You hear your own thoughts without interruption. Your intuition grows louder as external chaos fades. Decisions become simpler because they are no longer filtered through fear of conflict or abandonment. Peace is not passive. It is the outcome of inner strength choosing rest over reaction. It is evidence that you have reclaimed ownership of your emotional world. What once required constant effort now feels natural. You are no longer fighting to be understood or respected. The calm itself becomes proof that the power once taken from you has been fully returned to where it always belonged. Loss of reactivity starves manipulation because narcissistic behavior depends on predictable emotional responses to maintain influence and control. Reactivity is the invisible thread that keeps the dynamic alive. When a narcissist provokes, criticizes, gaslights, or withholds, they are watching for impact. Anger, defensiveness, sadness, or frantic explaining all signal that their behavior still has power over your inner state. When that reaction disappears, the mechanism they rely on begins to fail. This does not happen overnight. At first, you may still feel the emotional surge, but you choose not to express it. the surge itself weakens. Your nervous system learns that you are no longer required to respond to every stimulus as a threat. This is where real change occurs. By becoming less reactive, you stop reinforcing the pattern that trained the narcissist on how to control you. Manipulation loses effectiveness when there is no emotional payoff. Without reaction, their tactics fall flat, not because they suddenly become reasonable, but because you are no longer participating in the emotional exchange they engineered. Loss of reactivity also restores your sense of choice. Instead of responding automatically, you pause. That pause creates space for clarity. You begin to see behaviors for what they are rather than what they provoke you to feel. The power shifts inward as you realize that your emotional responses belong to you, not to anyone else's behavior. This shift often unsettles the narcissist as they may escalate tactics to regain control. Escalation is not strength, it is desperation. Each time you remain grounded, you reinforce a new pattern of self-regulation and self-respect. You are no longer teaching someone how to push your buttons because the buttons no longer work. Emotional neutrality becomes a form of protection. It does not mean you suppress feelings or deny harm. It means you process emotions privately, safely, and on your own terms. Reactivity once kept you trapped in cycles of explanation, defense, and exhaustion. Its absence breaks those cycles quietly but permanently. The less you react, the less there is to manipulate. What remains is a calm center that cannot be steered by provocation, a self that responds with intention rather than impulse, and a freedom that grows stronger the less you give away your emotional power. Self-trust replaces self-doubt when you finally step out of the psychological fog created by narcissistic manipulation. Self-doubt was never your natural state. It was learned through repeated invalidation, contradiction, and subtle rewriting of your reality. You were trained to question your memory, your feelings, your tone, and even your intentions. Each time you were told you were too sensitive, too dramatic, or imagining things, a small fracture formed in your confidence. Reclaiming self-trust begins when you stop outsourcing your perception to someone who benefited from you not believing yourself. It starts quietly in moments where you choose to honor what you feel without immediately dismissing it. You begin to notice patterns instead of isolated incidents. You recognize that your discomfort had meaning. As self-trust returns, your internal dialogue changes. The constant questioning softens. You no longer interrogate yourself for reacting or feeling hurt. Instead, you listen. This listening becomes an act of repair. You learn that your intuition was not wrong, it was overwhelmed. Trusting yourself does not mean you never doubt again, but it means doubt no longer dominates your decision-making. You stop seeking excessive reassurance from others because your inner compass grows steadier. Boundaries become easier because you no longer need proof to justify them. You act on what you know rather than what you are told to believe. This shift also changes how you interpret the narcissist's behavior. What once confused you now appears consistent. Their contradictions no longer destabilize you because your sense of reality is anchored internally. Self-trust restores dignity. You no longer feel the need to over-explain your choices or defend your perceptions. You accept that not everyone will agree with you, and that agreement is not required for validity. As this trust deepens, fear loosens its grip. Decisions feel less heavy because they are rooted in alignment rather than approval. You move with greater confidence, not because you are certain of every outcome, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever arises. The most profound change is the end of self-betrayal. You stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace or avoid conflict. You become someone you can rely on again. This inner reliability is what truly breaks the narcissist's influence, because control dissolves when you no longer doubt your own voice. The narcissist's control ends when attention ends, because attention is the currency that sustains their sense of power, relevance, and identity. Narcissistic behavior is driven by the need to be the focal point of emotional energy, whether that energy is admiration, anger, fear, or confusion. Positive or negative does not matter as long as it is intense and directed at them. When you withdraw attention, you remove the stage they rely on to perform and dominate. This withdrawal is not dramatic or announced. It happens internally first, when your thoughts no longer circle around their moods, their words, or their next move. You stop checking for signs of approval or disapproval. You stop replaying interactions to decode hidden meanings. As your attention returns to your own life, their influence weakens. Control requires constant engagement. Without it, manipulation loses traction. Attention once kept you tethered, because where attention goes, energy flows. When you redirect that energy toward your own healing, interests, and well-being, the narcissist's grip loosens naturally. This shift can feel unsettling at first, because attention had been conditioned as a form of survival. You were trained to monitor, anticipate, and respond to maintain stability. Letting go of that vigilance can feel like danger, even though it is freedom. Your nervous system recalibrates. You realize that nothing collapses when you are not watching them. Life does not fall apart when you are not managing their emotions. This realization is deeply empowering. The narcissist may attempt to reclaim attention through provocation, guilt, or sudden charm, but without emotional investment, these attempts feel hollow. You are no longer pulled into their orbit because your focus has shifted inward and forward. Attention also shapes identity. When you stop centering them, you rediscover who you are without the constant distortion of their presence. Your preferences, values, and desires reemerge. You begin to experience joy without scanning for consequences. Control dissolves because it cannot exist without participation. By ending attention, you are not punishing the narcissist. You are liberating yourself. Your mind becomes quieter. Your emotional energy becomes available for growth rather than defense. The power they once held was never inherent. It was borrowed from your focus. When you reclaim that focus, their control fades into irrelevance, and your life begins to expand beyond the narrow space they once occupied. Healing looks ordinary but feels revolutionary, because true recovery from narcissistic abuse does not arrive with fireworks or dramatic transformation. It shows up in subtle, almost invisible ways that might not impress an outside observer, but profoundly alter your inner world. One day you realize you slept through the night without waking in anxiety. Another day, you make a decision without rehearsing how to justify it. These moments seem small, yet they signal a deep internal shift. For a long time, survival required constant alertness, emotional labor, and self-suppression. Healing dismantles those patterns quietly. Ordinary routines begin to feel safe again. You drink your tea without tension in your shoulders. You enjoy silence without bracing for conflict. This ordinariness can feel unsettling at first, because chaos once masqueraded as normal. Peace may feel empty before it feels nourishing, yet beneath this calm is a profound revolution. Your nervous system is learning that it no longer has to live in crisis mode. You stop interpreting neutrality as danger. You stop mistaking intensity for connection. Healing also reveals itself in how you relate to yourself. You speak more gently in your own mind. You rest without guilt. You allow yourself to change your mind without self-punishment. These are not flashy victories, but they are acts of liberation. The revolutionary aspect of healing is that it rewrites your relationship with power. You no longer equate love with endurance or loyalty with self-erasure. You begin to value consistency over charm and safety over excitement. Life may look simpler from the outside, but inside, you are reclaiming territory that was once occupied by fear and self-doubt. Ordinary joy becomes radical when you were once denied it, laughing without scanning the room, expressing a preference without apology, feeling content without explanation. These are signs of freedom. Healing also alters your sense of time.